good evening, this is Hound Dog Steve coming to you on the 5th of February, and a very warm welcome to you all, to my regular subscribers and to any new subscribers joining me for the first time. I hope you enjoy the information that I can provide here. Okay, so here we are. Europe again is in trouble. Italy has now declared officially that it has gone into recession, and the whole core idea of the European Union seems to be coming undone at the seams. I don't know if you realise quite how important it is to the globalists that the EU project be a complete success, because once that was done, once that's completed, that was the launching pad to really convert the rest of the world to the globalist pattern. And I suspect had they succeeded, it would be an extremely powerful bloc. Unfortunately, the people in the planning room didn't bother to tell the people on the street, and so now there is a big problem pushing this idea forward, because I believe that Italy is just a foreshadowing of what is to befall the whole of Europe, and that is France and Germany are now teetering on the edge of recession. More and more economists are talking about recession, and when Brexit finally goes through as a hard exit, I think you are going to see a shockwave roll through Europe. You have to remember, one of the big issues here, I don't really want to call them migrants because that brings up all kinds of other issues, but let's just call it a large workforce entering the European Union. Okay, so what happens is, and I'm sure you can see this for yourselves, but when you have more demand for jobs, then wages tend to come down. And of course, when you are new to a country, you're in a pretty desperate situation, so you're prepared to take maybe a little bit lower wage than a person who's already been working in that country for a longer period of time, more established, and so on and so forth. So, you have this downward pressure on wages right now at a time when you have inflation, you have food inflation. There's been some terrible weather through Europe, so they've been getting some food inflation happening there. Anyway, when you have that kind of a combination, you can see that there could be some real stormy waters ahead. Anyway, let's go take a look at these clips that I found, and I'll come back and we'll do a quick wrap up. Okie dokie, here we go. BBC News: Italy in recession amid sluggish Eurozone. Italy's economy tipped into recession at the end of last year, according to the latest figures. In the final 3 months of 2018, the economy shrank by 0.2%, following a 0.1% decline in the third quarter, the Istat statistics office said. Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte said the contraction was likely to continue into 2019. Meanwhile, figures from the EU showed economic growth in the 19-country Eurozone still languishing. Growth in the euro area remained at the 0.2% in the final quarter of 2018, the same as the previous quarter and in line with analysts' expectations. The figures issued by the Eurostat agency showed that in the 28-nation EU as a whole, fourth quarter growth was 0.3%. But you can see on this chart here that there is definitely Italy's GDP tends to mirror the euro area GDP in general. You can see that, even if it's just a little bit lower, it is still the same pattern. The renewed recession in Italy aggravates the problem the government has with its finances. The ruling party's desire to increase spending to meet election campaign commitments led to a standoff with the European Commission, which argued Italy was going to be borrowing too much. Rome pared back its plans and the dispute was resolved. But the fact that the economy has turned out to be even weaker is bad news for the government finances. Tax revenue will be hit, and that will tend to lead to a bigger financial hole to be filled by borrowing. And that is the big problem all these countries have, is they have borrowed too much. Okay, Express. EU's junker savaged over euro falling, low growth, instability and political discord. The Eurozone's 20th anniversary celebrations have received a frosty reception from critics and experts after Jean-Claude Juncker and Brussels' team lauded the single currencies bloc creation. Europe's single currency turned 20 after launching on January the 1st, 1999, and has played a key role in the European Union's policy ever since. As a centrepiece of the daily lives of 340 million people across 19 countries, the EU's most senior officials celebrated the euro as a bastion of stability and prosperity across the bloc as the European Central Bank continues to operate as a powerhouse of monetary policy. Mr. Juncker, the European Commission President and the last top-ranked EU official still serving after signing the Maastricht Treaty that created the basis for the single currency during his time as Prime Minister of Luxembourg. But the 2008 financial crisis, which severely damaged the euro, and the Greek debt crisis of 2010 has left a sour taste in the mouths of some experts, many of whom believe the faltering currency will one day completely collapse. Richard Wellings, Deputy Research Director at the free market think tank, the Institute of Economic Affairs, said the euro has become a symbol of the EU's economic malaise and internal divisions. The EU elite put the drive towards ever closer union above the interests of citizens. One size fits all doesn't work, and the best policy now would be an orderly breakup of the Eurozone. Steve Keen, a professor of economics at the Kingston University, said the euro has brought low growth and economic instability and political discord to Europe. EU shock prediction: Eurozone will break up in 2019 amid national turmoil, experts warn. The Eurozone must integrate economically or risk breaking up in 2019 as spiralling debts, trade wars across the Atlantic and Brexit turmoil cause chaos for 19 of the 28 EU member states. Desperate times lie ahead for the Eurozone as economic growth slows, particularly in countries such as Italy, where debt levels are already astronomically high at $2.2 trillion. The Centre for Economic and Business Research said in its annual predictions for 2019, internal contradictions would force the Eurozone to integrate economically or risk breaking up. They added, it is possible to defer the confrontation for a year or two, but the boil will have to be lanced at some point since Italians have clearly reached a point of austerity fatigue. The Express, arrogant contempt for concerns of ordinary people will spell death of EU. And here we go. Failure to strengthen the Eurozone, demands for more sovereignty and contempt for voters are driving the European Union to its end. Several scholars specialised in European policy have claimed, as they forecast, Jean-Claude Juncker's dream could come to an end within 10 years, or I think an awful lot less. Academics across the European Union have issued a damning review of the state of the project, warning top Eurocrats their pursuit of further integration is fueling growing dissent among EU voters. As Italy descends towards the brink of a recession, threatening the stability of a fragile Eurozone, Eastern European countries have been increasingly voicing their dissent towards the plans for the future of the European project and demanded control over matters of national concern be returned to them. With Brexit on the horizon, experts in EU policy have warned the bloc changes will have to be made to the inner structure of the European Union machine to save it from total collapse. Craig McKinley, MP, a staunch supporter of the Brexit campaign, suggested the quasi-religious regard the European Commission and its boss, Jean-Claude Juncker, have for the European treaties could be a driving force of dissent among EU member states craving more independence. So I think there are a couple of things that play here. One, of course, is, as we saw, the absolute arrogance that has basically been a shroud over this whole episode for the last 30, 40, 50 years as this has unfolded. But the other thing is that, how can I put it, when you look at systems and how they operate, you can see, there was games in the past like Risk, where you'd be moving armies around the world and supplies and so on and so forth to fight these great big battles. And of course now we do the same things in video games. And, so looking over things from an overview position, it seems that you can, just move people and resources and things backwards and forwards without any collateral effect. But in reality, as you start looking closer and closer and closer at communities, there is a whole myriad of microtransactions taking place that create a whole cause and effect scenario in that area that is unique to that area. You know, you may be able to get a general picture, a general overview, but there are so many little details that take place to form a community, to form a society. You know, it's not like you can say, okay, well, we'll put 10 people in a room and we will assume that each person can do this amount of work in a particular amount of time, times that by 10. Okay, we'll put them together as a team, we'll get them to try and execute a task, and we should be able to get it done in this amount of time. Well, you didn't take into account the communication barrier, cultural barriers, disagreements, two alpha people in the group who want to lead, and you know, there are all these little things that go to make up that group that is not just cut and dried. You can't just analyze stuff and use data that expects precise results, even quasi-precise results based on averages, because it just doesn't work like that. And that's actually what I'm concerned about with some of these algorithms, is that they really don't take any of this into account. They're fed a fixed set of data. Now, it might be a huge amount of data, but that data is unmoving, and humanity is dynamic. We are moving, we are changing all the time, and it's very hard to keep up with that, especially when you don't understand these little subtleties like humor and nuance and coincidence and this kind of stuff, all the things that we do instinctively. I mean, we're actually wonderful at that kind of stuff. Computers are lousy, and you may get them close, but in a critical juncture, certainly when it comes to moral issues, I would definitely not leave it just to an algorithm to come up with the solution. So I think we're looking at some rough times. I think the yellow vest protests are going to spread throughout Europe. Anyway, I think that is what will characterize 2019, and that was my top prediction for 2019. You can go back and check that, but it was the yellow vest protests. And look out, buddy, we've only just started. We've just hit February. We've just gone through the first 4 weeks of 2019, and look at what has happened already. Okay, it's going to be an exciting year, my friends, so fasten your seatbelts and hang on for the ride. I'll be taking it with you. Okay, well, you take care. Please comment, like and subscribe. Press that big red button. It really does help when you do. We've cleared the 11,000 subscriber hurdle, and we're closing in on 11,500, all thanks to you. Okay, so I appreciate all of that, and I certainly love reading your comments. There's some very, very intelligent and interesting people out there. In the meantime, this is Hound Dog Steve signing off. You take care, you have yourself a great evening, and we will talk very, very soon. See you now. Bye.